There was actually something in the script that they cut out. There's a moment where he meets a little boy. She comes up to him and he's turning the boy around, looking at him. She says, "What is this?" And she said, "Well, it's child." The line originally was that they cut out. And he comes and he's turning the boy around and he says, "What is this?" And she says, "It's a child." So they said, "Oh, can I eat it?" Hello, I'm Paul Eiding. I played Ambassador Loquel on the episode Liasons on Star Trek The Next Generation. And this is Trek Untold.
Welcome to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. Paul Eiding played Ambassador Loquel on the Star Trek TNG 7th season episode Liasons. That's the one where some aliens have a makeshift cultural exchange with the crew of the Enterprise and attempt to learn about certain emotions and concepts that they have no understanding of on their planet. For Paul's character, his was the alien obsessed with eating chocolate. Needless to say, he had a pretty good day at work. It's a very fun character from a very good episode, and he's got some awesome memories to share about his time aboard that starship. One of the great things about talking to people who have performed on Star Trek is that usually those folks have done so many different things in their careers that, as you already know if you're a regular fan of this show, that sci-fi franchise is really a footnote among some other very interesting and exciting things. With the resume that today's guest has, you'll see exactly what I mean, because while his single role in Star Trek was quite memorable, it's everything he did beyond that that really caught my attention and made me want to have him as a guest on this podcast. Beyond Trek, you've either seen or most likely heard Paul in nearly 300 different films, TV shows, and that includes things like Doogie Howser, The Twilight Zone, Cheers, Simon & Simon, and many, many more. But really, it's when you don't see his face that you might know him a little bit better. If you're like me and grew up as a kid in the 80s and 90s, you will undoubtedly recognize Paul's voice instantly as Perceptor from Transformers, as well as Colonel Roy Campbell from the Metal Gear Solid video game franchise. And for those who grew up in the 2000s, he's been the voice of Grandpa Max in Ben 10 through many iterations of that show. Paul has also been a part of the Diablo and Doom franchises, Warhammer 40k, StarCraft, Toxic Crusaders, Porco Rosso, SWAT Cats, Fallout, and so much more. His voiceover career is so iconic and so prolific that I could have easily devoted an entire episode of this podcast to just that, but I guess we do have to talk about Star Trek at some point, right? For me, this was one of those interviews that brought me back to simpler times of Saturday morning cartoons and staying up late after school playing video games, and really, what more could I ask from a guest on Trek Untold? So let's spend some time meeting a performer whose voice shaped our childhoods and, in some cases, is shaping our own kids' childhoods, and that would be Mr. Paul Eiding. But before we start our chat with this week's guest, I want to remind you to please follow Trek Untold on social media, including Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. You can find this show on all of those platforms simply by searching for Trek Untold. Make sure you subscribe to this show, whether that's on the audio platform of your choosing or on YouTube, where the video version of this show lives. And speaking of, make sure to check out our YouTube channel more frequently for episodes of our new mini show, Tales from Trek Untold, as well as other sci-fi goodies. And of course, don't forget to leave ratings, reviews, comments, and whatever you can do no matter what platform you're on to enjoy this podcast and show others that you're digging it too. If you want to support this show financially, please consider becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/trekuntold. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and beam in this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. He's been Superman's dad, and Autobot, and the devil himself, along with more aliens that you can shake a fist at, including a very unique alien who loves chocolate in Star Trek history. We're joined today by Mr. Paul Eiding. Paul, how's it going? Welcome to Trek Untold.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm happy to be here. All is well.
Awesome. That's good to hear. I love that your background, you were like on brand today with Star Trek talk. I can already see that. You're prepped.
It's not a bad idea to have Marina Hurtis behind me as well. you know.
Not a bad
Irene
thing at all.
Sturtis. Oh, this side. Yeah. There she is. Yeah.
So yeah, let's jump into things here because we got a lot to talk about, not just Trek. I'm honestly, this is a Trek show, but your career, especially in voiceover, is astonishing, and I really want to dig into some of that stuff. I've grown up hearing your voice, whether it's on cartoons or video games, so this is real fun to be able to talk to you today. But first things first, to keep it in the world of Star Trek, I'd like to know, what's your earliest memory of Star Trek? Did you grow up watching the show?
Oh, yeah, of course. The first one. Yeah. Kirk and all the guys. And looking back and say, even at the time, seeing some of the special effects were not fabulous, but it didn't matter. It wasn't about special effects. It wasn't about fighting the monsters that you could see were silly outfits that people were wearing. For me, it wasn't about that. It was about the human condition, and taking care of other people and caring about what was going on in not just the world, but in the universe. Yeah, it was more about that than it was about the special effects for me.
I think that's how a lot of people resonate with it. With Star Trek, they kind of think of it as that bigger picture message as opposed to just cool sci-fi pew pew.
Yeah. Well, Roddenberry, Gene Roddenberry, just a brilliant mind, Yeah, so I fell into love with it early on.
Awesome. And eventually you got to live that dream. We'll get back to that. But while we're talking some past stuff here, I want to go into some of your secret origin story, if you will. So can you tell us, Paul, where you grew up, who your parents were and what they did, and what did little Paul want to be when he grew up?
Wow. I mean, born in Cleveland, Ohio. And my mother, I was raised by my mother and my grandparents. My mother lived, I had a brother and a sister, older brother, older sister. We all lived together with my grandparents. My mother worked as in produce at the A&P in Cleveland, Ohio. My father, I have no idea. I didn't find out until a year ago. Let's see, was it a year ago? No, yeah, a year ago, last July.
Wow.
I never knew who my father was.
Really? Wow.
Until I was contacted by someone on 23andMe. Yeah, who showed up as my half brother. So, yeah, the man whose name I carry, Eiding, I found out was not my father. He and my mother had been together apart, and were definitely apart when I was conceived. And so I never knew really who my father was. So until a year ago, July.
Wow, that is wild.
Yeah. At this age, at this time in my life, to find out that I have a half brother and a half sister was pretty astounding.
That's got to be life changing, really.
Yeah, we've talked. I've not met them in person. They live in West Virginia. We've talked on Zoom. We've Zoomed a few times, and I've called and done some FaceTime. My father passed away. I guess he was in his 60s when he passed away, so I never had a chance to meet him. So that was my early life, and when young Paul, when he was in school, I just wanted to be a musician. I remember being in elementary school, and they had hearing tests, not to see if you could hear, but to see if you could hear notes, and if you could sing in tune, that sort of thing. And I had a very good ear, so they decided that the kids who didn't have great pitch recognition were given wind instruments. The ones who had better pitch recognition were given string instruments. So I played the string bass, and then played through high school. And my dream was to play with the Cleveland Orchestra. It was all music for me. And it pretty much was music until I went into the military. And even then, I got into a group called the Mountain Glee Club. I got in as a singer and a bass player. And then within 6 months, I became the director of the group and did that for a year and a half. Yeah, it was crazy. So music. And then I got to the point where I felt that I started playing with guys who were really top-notch pros. And I realized that I would have to really woodshed to come up to their level. And I didn't have the drive anymore. So another friend of mine who had been an actor, who was in the military with me, suggested that I should be an actor because we would read plays together and that sort of thing. And I decided, yeah, I'm going to give that a shot. And all of a sudden, I've had a career. That's a real shortened version.
That's pretty crazy again, though. Now, you're in the Army. That's when you discover you want to be a professional actor. So were you like doing auditions while you were still serving? Like, how does that actually work?
No.
Okay.
No, I was in Germany when I was in, and we would perform for soldiers, for officers' clubs, and for the German nationals. We perform in different opera houses, that sort of thing. And the gentleman who suggested I become an actor, his name was John Hancock, a large black man with an incredible basso voice, who was an actor when he got drafted. This is in the time of the draft, obviously. And we would come back after performing, and after performing on stage, whether you're doing music or whatever, you're high, the adrenaline is still pumping. So we'd come back to the barracks and we would improv, play games, and then we would read plays. And the play we read that sparked everything was a zoo story, a 2-character play of these 2 guys who meet in a park. It's a strange play, but it's a wonderful piece. And when we finished, John said, "Paul, this is what you should do. You're an actor." And I'd done a couple of shows in high school and in college, but I'd never thought of it as a career. Even then, I wasn't thinking of it as a career. It was something that was really fun to do, and I really enjoyed it. And when I got out of the military, I went back to Cleveland, and I was still trying to play, but I started doing what they call community theater, where nobody gets paid, and had a great time. Did a lot of musicals, and then moved to Minnesota, to Minneapolis, that had a great theater scene. I had a great theater called the Guthrie Theater. Moved there with my girlfriend, and that's when I started doing, still not getting paid, but doing theater. And then I got into an improv troupe called the Brave New Workshop. And there, I actually got paid $100 a week.
Ooh.
And this is in 1975. So we're making $100 a week, writing the material, performing the material, scrubbing the floors, cleaning the bathrooms, taking tickets, doing all of it. And I still consider that some of the most exciting, creative time of my life. I just loved it. And from there, one of the guys had a straight job because you can't live on $100 a week. I started doing voiceovers for people, for different companies, and got into doing commercials, on-camera commercials, as well as voiceover. Because the improv stuff, I guess I could consider myself kind of a clown at the time, because we would do some really silly stuff. And I got popular doing over-the-top commercials, just silly stuff. And made a living, got married, bought a house as an actor, which was astounding. And that's not a bragging thing. That was just a lucky thing. and realized that this is something I could do, that I had talent, and just kept working at it.
And clearly it's worked out for you. I mean, you're doing something right, obviously.
Every once in a while, I'm not kidding,
Yeah.
every once in a while, I look back and say, and I'm sure most actors are like this, wow, how did that happen? How did this guy started doing improv for 100 a week, ends up all these years later with a career? And from 1975 until now, I've never had to take another job. I've never waited tables. I've never had to do anything but act. My feeling is the more you can do as an actor, the more you will do. So if you can dance a little, cool. If you can sing a little, there's always something for you. If you can learn how to use a microphone. So there's more than one way to earn a living. Right now, I'm in rehearsal for a Shakespeare play. The theater company that I belong to, called Antaeus Theater Company. We used to be called Antaeus Classical Theater because we would only do the classics, anything from 1910 and earlier. And as a matter of fact, our theater company, probably a third of the company have been on one of the Star Trek shows over the years. I mean, Bruno Law, Kitty Swink, Armin Shimmerman, a ton of us have been either guest starred or been regulars on Star Trek. And I think it's because of the classical training.
I've actually had Armin and Kitty on the show before, and we talked about that same theater, so I didn't realize you were with that group. That's amazing.
I've been with the group since 2000. And we are opening the Shakespeare, The Winter's Tale, this coming Sunday. In fact, the last year I did there was directed by Armin.
Huh.
We did Measure for Measure, another Shakespeare, and we rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. We got it ready. We went up and we were closed in the second weekend because of COVID back in 2018.
Wow.
Yeah. Armin and Kitty are the best. Just great folks.
Absolutely. They're both amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing them. They're going to be at Trek Long Island 2 coming up this summer. I've had them on the show before, but I get to finally meet them in person, so I'm very happy about that.
You'll love it. They're the best.
Now, do you remember like what some of your very first gigs were? And this could be on screen or behind the microphone, because you mentioned you were doing a lot of clowning and some more silly stuff, but what were those early gigs that you had that kind of helped you get established and figure things out?
Wow. In Minneapolis, my first Actors Equity gig, this is because when I was working in improv, it wasn't union, it wasn't professional. We were getting paid, and it was a very popular group. They're still around. It was called Dudley Riggs, the man's actual name, Dudley Riggs Brave New Workshop. And that was one thing that really got me going, made me realize that, I have some talent. And then my first audition for an Actors Equity show was at a place called Chanhassen. Chanhassen Theater at the time had 4 theaters under one roof. And it's still around. It's a very successful, it's called a dinner theater, and it is, but it's not like, dinner is not the most important thing. The theater is the most important thing. It's a wonderful place to work. My first audition was for Fiddler on the Roof. I had done it a couple of times in Cleveland. I did it one time in Michigan. And then they had auditions for Fiddler, which has the best role for a character man ever, as the lead for Tevye. That's what I auditioned for. And I got cast as another character and for the understudy for Tevye. Stuff happened. And it was my first gig. And as it happened, the gentleman who was playing Tevye had some issues. And they decided to let him go about a month and a half into the run. And it just happened to have been the same night that I went up and was giving my notice that I was leaving the show, because I just couldn't deal with how he was acting. Not his acting, He was a wonderful actor and a great singer. But things weren't right. I don't want to say too much nasty because the man has passed away, but they were letting him go on that night. And they asked me if I was ready to go on as Tevye the next, this was a Saturday night. Could you go on as Tevye for the matinee tomorrow? And we hadn't had too many understudy rehearsals, but I was ready. I knew the role. I knew everything about it. I knew the dances. I knew the songs. And I said, yeah. Because also I figured if I went on with no rehearsal, even if I screwed up, I would, people would forgive me, the cast would forgive me, and then if I did a good job, then I'm a hero, So I felt like I couldn't lose. So I went on, and then I did it for the entirety of the round for 10 months, 8 shows a week. And I don't think theatrically I've not had more joyful time, because every night was different. And because that role, Tevye, you get to make the audience laugh, cry, you get to sing, you get to dance a little. And I was with a great cast of actors. And I guess that's really when I knew that, yeah, I'm an actor. The commercial stuff was working as well. It was great. But for voiceover, I've done a lot of commercials in Minneapolis, but I moved out here to Los Angeles. I had one friend who got me an interview with her agent, Sutton, Barth, and Venari. They were big-time commercial agents. And they signed me on camera, but they said, we've got everybody we need for voiceover, so they wouldn't sign me voiceover. I said, if you keep me working, I'm fine. And Membre, the voiceover department head, Rita Venari, was walking through. This is what they told me. They were walking through as the other 2 agents were watching my on-camera reel. And they said, watch this guy, he's good. So she's watching, and then I did a character, and she said, I'm going to call him in. There's a voice that they're looking for an audition. So she called me in, and it was for the voice of an olive. It was Lindsay Olives. And that was my first voiceover audition, as I recall, and I booked it. And they flew me up to San Francisco to record up there. And then after that, she said, okay, well, I'm going to keep bringing him in. And she did. And I was booking. But I hadn't done any, at this point, I don't think I had done any animated stuff. I'm doing a play right after I got to LA, when I signed the agency and all that stuff, doing a play called Cloud Mountain. Great play on stage. And I played 3 characters. I played an African manservant, intentionally a white man playing a black, no makeup, but African garb. I played a Cockney soldier in a dream sequence. And I played a 5-year-old girl with pigtails and ruffled panties and Mary Jane shoes. I was a hideously unattractive 5-year-old child. And a gentleman by the name of Gordon Hunt happened to come to see the show. Big theater, voiceover. He was the head of casting and directing at Hanna-Barbera. He came to see the show. He liked what he saw, obviously, and called me in for what they called a general audition, where they give you 10 different characters and have you make up voices for each of these different characters. They'd show you pictures or describe a character. Okay, what can you come up with? And I did that, and I got lucky, and he started calling me in. And I did lots of Saturday morning cartoons for Hanna-Barbera cartoons. I got to be a Smurf, chimney sweep Smurf. This is when they brought Smurfs back. and Jane Jetson's high school boyfriend, Boy Nova, who was a nerd in high school but became a Vegas superstar. I did, some Scooby-Doo, did Johnny Quest, the GoBots.
Your VO resume is just like miles long. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, people will contact me, come up to me at different Comic-Cons and say, "Oh, could you have me sign something?" I have to go on IMDb to remember. Oh, that, yeah, I did that. Yeah, that.
I mean, I told my girlfriend you were in Gem, and she was like, "Oh my God," she was flipping out over that, and yeah, she thinks she actually knows the exact episode too because she knows this world. But yeah, I mean, the stuff you've done in VO is amazing. I mean, I'm sitting here right now talking to you, and I'm just like thinking in the back of my mind, when I'm done with this interview, I'm gonna just play some Diablo 2 because I've heard that voice for so many years, and that's amazing. But yeah, we're gonna dig into the VO stuff a little bit. I do want to ask you about something else I talk about a lot on this show here, and this might surprise you, Paul, but as much as we talk about Star Trek, we talk about the Golden Girls. And you did an episode of that show back in season 5 called Ebb Tide. I just watched it. You got to hang out with Betty White, which is so cool. I'd love to hear any stories you have from working on that set.
It was really extra special to be able to work that show. It's one of those shows that they had been doing it long enough that they had it down. Okay, some shows you get there and you have to wander around and you don't know until someone comes to you and says, "Oh, you're supposed to be over here." Well, that show, when I got there, everything was laid out. Well, we got there for the table read. Everybody had their name tags. To be honest with you, some shows, when you arrive on the set, you're embraced by everybody. You're brought in. You feel like you're part of the family. That show was a little different. I always knew that I was visiting. There was nothing antagonistic. No one was nasty. It was just super professional. So it wasn't like a touchy-feely group, except for Betty White. She was the one comes to you, hugs you, gives you a kiss on the cheek. She was everything that people claim that she was. She was warm. She was funny. She was endearing and very generous with her time. I mean, I can't say enough about her, and to be able to sit here and say, "Yeah, I worked with Betty White." I mean, that's a big deal to me. No one would, like I said, no one was off-putting. Branch. Now we had already done a movie together, a made-for-TV movie together. Take My Daughters, Please, I think was the name of it, where I played a Johnny Carson type of host for a late night show, and she came on the show, and we did this whole interview thing, and she was still, it was, I guess, I don't know if she remembered it. It was like the year before, but she was fine, but she wasn't as warm as Betty was. But it was very cool to be able to do that show. And I can't tell you how many people contact me over and over again on Facebook and on Instagram saying, "I just watched it again." I can't, because they play it all the time. Yeah, that was a fun show.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of fun, and that's a great episode too. Like, that's one I didn't really remember, and that's yeah. If you're a Golden Girls fan, Ebb Tide season 5, it's worth rewatching. And I do got now kind of a guilty pleasure show that I like to talk about in this podcast also. And it's not a lot of folks I feel like who have worked on it. So whenever I get somebody who has, I got to bug them about the show. But you were on season 1 of Martial Law with Sammo Hung. I'm a big Sammo Hung fan. I've talked to a few folks who have been on the show. Your episode was Captive Hearts. You were Dr. Ari Wilson. I think you or a stunt double got to do some work with Sammo. So what do you remember about that? And specifically, any stories about Sammo?
Sammo was great. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
And let me tell you about the stunt. I'm a bad guy. I'm a very bad guy in that show. And there's a scene where I get kicked in the face. I forgot her name. She who played one of the other cops.
Oh, Kelly Hugh?
Yeah, there you go. Kelly. There's a scene where I get hit and then get kicked in the face. And I happen to know the director, Michael Lang, wonderful, wonderful director who directed tons of Buffy, and he's directed everything, like 200 episodes of different shows. And they told me, okay, we've got a stunt double for you for this fight scene. And it was like, I don't really need a stunt double because, the stuff is just, he gets kicked and gets spun around and falls to his knees against the wall. And I said, that's nothing. I'm an actor. I'm a stage actor. I can do that. And they said, well, no, we've already got the stunt double, so we're going to let him do it. And I said, okay. So they put this wig on the stunt double with a little, I think he had a little bald spot to look like me, and he had a lot more hair than I did. So they'll do it once or twice, and then he hurt himself. He went down and messed up his knee, so he couldn't do it anymore.
Oh, wow.
So they only did it, I think once or twice, but he fell the wrong way. And I said, I can do that. It's not that big a deal. So they said, okay. So if you look closely, there are two people doing it. He is at the part where she kicks him. They didn't want her kick to come. They were worried about it coming close to my face. So they had him do that, or he had already done that. But the spin around and fall, that's me. It's like, it's not, it's like, and of course I gave him a hard time. I said, do I get stunt pay now for doing this? Although I kept saying, it's not a stunt. And I didn't get stunt pay because it was too simple. We do that kind of stuff on stage all the time,
Still, you survived a kick from a martial arts master on martial law, which is pretty epic.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Hey everybody, we'll get right back to the interview in 1 second, but I wanted to remind you all to check out Trek Untold over at Patreon. Patreon is the best way to directly support creators of things you like through a monthly subscription of an amount that you can choose. Trek Untold has a few different tiers already with different benefits, ranging from early access to episodes, the ability to ask a future guest questions, exclusive merchandise, and other bonuses that I'd love to offer, but first I need to grow that Patreon community to do that. Trek Untold has been around since mid-2020 and has grown a ton since then, thanks to listeners and viewers like you. Through a platform like Patreon, you can help me keep improving the quality of each episode and keep bringing you new interviews with folks that make the Star Trek universe what it is. If this community can grow more over on Patreon, I can offer new perks like watch parties, exclusive Trek Untold episodes, being able to directly interact with guests, and other things, but in order to do that, I need to know my audience wants these things. The best way to tell me what you want is by supporting us on Patreon, so please, check us out at patreon.com/TrekUntold today and become a bigger part of the Trek Untold family. And now, back to the interview. All right, well, Paul, let's beam into our Star Trek discussion right now. And you played Ambassador Loquel on the 7th season TNG episode Liasons. For the folks watching the video version, they could see him right behind you right there. Yep. I'm curious to know, had you auditioned for Star Trek before you got this role?
Do you know, I don't think I had an audition before this.
First timer.
My joke with my wife is, they went through every actor they could get to in Los Angeles before they got to me.
Only season 7,
Exactly. It's like, wait a minute. No, I don't think I'd gone back and forth with my agents. I've had one agent until she retired, I forget how many years ago. And now I don't even have a theatrical agent. Whatever happens is because people come to me. But the agency was going through a different thing, whatever. So I think this was the first audition I had for Star Trek. Isn't that interesting? It's like all those years. I don't think, I can't remember another one.
That's interesting. Yeah, a lot of times folks that we talked to on the show, they've had like tons of auditions. Others, it's just one and they get it. So it's bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, the joke is, they've used everybody else. So they had to find somebody different. So they found me.
You remember what the audition was like at all?
I could make something up.
Okay, well, we'll move on then.
No, I think it was pretty much, I honestly can't remember. except that I knew the guy immediately.
Hmm.
There are those auditions that you have when you read the script, you just know the character. You just sense who this character is. You don't have to think too deeply about it, because to try and understand human pleasure, it's like, oh, okay, we're not talking about love. We're talking about what makes you feel good. And I love chocolate. I love games. I like being around people. So it wasn't, yeah. I wish I could give you something definitive.
Well, this is pretty interesting, though, because you're kind of giving us some insight now into your approach about this guy. And the way you're talking, it kind of sounds like Loquel was a bit of an extension of you.
Yeah. And the other thing I remember was the innocence of the guy, because there was actually something in the script that they cut out. I was a little sad that they cut it out, and I understand why they cut it out. But from this character's point of view, he was a totally innocent in the ways of humans. There's a moment where he meets a little boy. He walks away from Marina, and he's walking down. He sees a little boy, and she comes up to him, and he's turning the boy around, looking at him. She says, "What is this?" And she said, "Well, it's a child." The line originally was that they cut out. He turns around. Now they've just come from desserts and everything, and having all this wonderful food. And he comes and he's turning the boy around, and he says, "What is this?" And she says, "It's a child." And I said, "Oh, can I eat it?" And she said, "No. That's." Then she explains the whole birth and growth process. And from his point of view, it wasn't like, "Hey, can I kill this child we need?" It's like he was totally innocent about, "Oh, is this something else you eat?" Because I thought it was funny in a sick way, but not from his point of view. He didn't mean it in any horrible way. But they said, "No, we can't talk about eating children." Like, okay, I get it.
It's funny because I'm glad you brought up that scene. I wanted to talk to you about it because that's like one of the most hilarious scenes in that episode. It really is. Like, I don't know if you remember that kid that well, but his reactions were just like masterclass right there. That's some brilliant stuff from the kid that young.
Right. Yeah, he was sweet.
Not literally, because you couldn't eat him.
Yeah, you can't eat it. It's
I'd like to know about the makeup also. I mean, had you done a lot of prosthetics in your career up to this point?
No.
Really? So first time audition and first time prosthetics.
Yeah, the first time I've done little things for stage makeup and whatnot, added this and adding that, but nothing like that. I guess that was the toughest part, was the 2.5 hours. And I got it really easy compared to a lot of my friends who did the show. It was about 2.5 hours, getting the forehead on and the eyes and whatnot, and you're doing the makeup and blending everything, and the hair. I was happy they gave me a lot of hair. Yeah, it was the longest part. But I also thought it was cool because it was the Westmores and all these guys that I was blown away by when I first started watching movies way back when I was a kid. That whole family of makeup artists through the years that I actually got to wear one of their pieces. It was a big deal to me. In fact, I saved the forehead. The last day of shoot, I saved it, put it in a plastic bag. I said, "I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to use it for Halloween." I wanted to put it in a safe place. Then I was going to put it on for Halloween. Well, the safe place was really a safe place because I couldn't find it. I could not remember where I put it. I didn't find it for like 3 years later, and I'm not kidding. And at that point, the forehead had gone to this big. It's like, okay, yeah, but it was that was cool to me. I loved the fact that I got to do the prosthetic makeup, because my other friends had done all these other shows. Like, yeah, I got the forehead. I've got I couldn't see, I couldn't breathe. Mine was easy.
Yeah, you had an easy day comparatively speaking.
Exactly.
But it's still kind of challenging too, because you still have to emote. And I noticed this about your character too. Is like Ambassador Loquel. He's very exuberant and enthusiastic about what he does. But again, you can't really do a lot of like eyebrow raises. You're kind of just restricted, right? So, for someone who hasn't really done a lot of prosthetics, how did you approach that challenge, and what did you do to help the character emote?
Well, they let you know in makeup what you can and can't, what's going to move, what isn't going to move. So you got to alter stuff. And for emoting, the same thing you do behind the microphone. Everything has to be heightened reality. So you have to pump things up a little bit more than you normally would to get it across, to get the emotions across, to get the feeling across. Without all the makeup, I might have made some different choices. It may have been a little more subtle. But I don't know if it would have worked. Do you know what I mean?
I feel like Loquel needs to be big because this is all new to him.
Yeah, everything's new and it's exciting. I mean, I also thought of him as, when I keep saying about the innocence of him, for me that means a childlike innocence. And if you watch children do things for the first, or discovering things for the first time, it's big. It's not like, oh, that's nice. Oh, that's cool. I like that. We as we age out of 12, 14, 16 years old, we're taught to be a little cooler. You know what I mean? You can't show that much emotion because people think you're silly or whatever. So we put governors on ourselves over time. And I've played enough characters either on stage or like Loquel that you just want to let it out. There's nothing wrong with sharing emotion.
I felt like the word that comes to mind when I see your portrayal of Ambassador Loquel is it's kind of guttural. And when I think guttural, you usually think like it's raw and angry and violent, but it's guttural in that it's kind of like infantile, but in the best way possible, that it just is who he is. And he's just, for folks who are watching the video, we can see him right now. That's, I think, the scene from the poker game, or it might be when he's eating chocolate. I can't quite remember, but it's still this kind of like wonder and amazement at what's happening around him, whether it's good or bad. It's just taking it in and wow, this is it. This is just first reaction.
Yeah, because during the game, when they're, the fight happens with Warp, and he's just, Warp, he's eat his candy, and what's going on over there? It's like, yeah, okay, that happens. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it, the guttural, but in an innocent, is childlike way. Yeah.
And speaking of that poker scene too, I'd love to talk about that one, because looking at the episode, I feel like that was, as far as like your character and the group that were on the Enterprise, I felt like that might have been the most tricky to actually set up the shot. And for folks who want to know, this episode was directed by Cliff Ball, who did many, many Star Trek episodes. So I'm curious what you recall about that particular scene, and if it was as tricky as I'm thinking it might have been.
It was not for me.
That's true. You get to sit back and enjoy.
Yeah. My job as a character and as an actor is to let the world happen around me, and ignore what camera. I didn't know was there a camera there?
Supposedly somewhere. I
didn't notice there was a camera. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, unless you want to be playing to camera. I don't remember them having, I'm sure they did. Anytime you have a group of people and you're shooting overs, and it took a while because the different angles and shooting over shoulder and whatnot. I haven't watched it for a long time. So I wish I could give you more information about it. Yeah, not for me. I would just having chocolate playing the game.
It's a good life.
Yeah. I said, but it was hell. Yeah, doing that show was hell, boy.
Like, I'm allergic to chocolate. I had to fake it the whole time. I was eating potatoes colored brown.
No, that was chocolate.
Oh yeah, that definitely was. I was part jealous, but part also like, man, my lactose intolerance would not have been happy on that day with all that ice cream. But Man, did I want some of it. It looked so good.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, to work with all those guys, my God.
And most of the time, your character is spending time with Deanna Troi, Marina Sirtis. So do you remember anything about working with Marina? How was she to hang out with?
Um, she was lovely. I know that there are little backstories. There was maybe I shouldn't be talking about. Well, it's too late now, and it's been so long ago.
Statute of limitations is over. It's fine.
uh, there was some irritation happening because they kept changing her hairstyle, and she was tired of them messing with her hairstyle. Got to change this. Got to do this. Got to that. It's like enough was enough, and which I understand as an actor. It's like okay, but that was minor stuff. It didn't affect me at all. But I remember hearing about that. But me working with Marina was wonderful. She was, again, top-notch pro and generous. When an actor wants to, you get a feeling when someone is sharing the stage with you or sharing the camera with you, as opposed to someone who is taking their moment and ignoring yours. You know what I mean? As an actor, you feel that. You sense that. Never felt that with Marina. She was just lovely to work with. And what's funny is that, God, how many years ago? Probably 10 years ago, 8 or 10 years ago, we did a Comic-Con together. I didn't know she was going to be there, so it wasn't like we were both there. We were in New Zealand at a Comic-Con. I went to her and I said, I don't know, do you remember me? And she said, I'm not sure. And then I told her about the episode, and she said, oh, yes. Chocolate. I said, yes. And desserts. I said, yes. It's like, she remembered all she said, how do you forget those desserts that they had? And Marina Sirtis serving me dessert. It's like, that's another one. It's like, and I got paid for that.
Living the dream.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about that in the show. And then we started talking about something even more important. And that was Tottenham Football Club in the UK. We are both big football fans, not soccer fans for Americans. I love watching the English Premier League, and her team is Tottenham. She has a tattoo on her shoulder, a Tottenham tattoo. We were talking at one point, and somebody came by, and one of the guests, I don't remember who the guest was, but came by and started talking about another team, Arsenal. And then they almost got into it because he said something negative about her team. And she warned him. She said, no, you don't go there. You don't do that. And I think she's serious. She's a major Tottenham Spurs fan. And then about, I guess, a year later, I saw her at our theater because of all the people from our theater. I don't remember what show it was. It Hot House? I did another play. She came to see a show. No, it wasn't in it. Marina came to see a show. She comes to see our theater from time to time to see what's playing when she's in town. So we got to say hello again then. Yeah. She's aces as far as I'm concerned in my book.
Now, I know you haven't watched Liasons in quite some time. You just mentioned that, but do you recall if you watched it when it first aired? Or are you someone that actually watches your stuff when it's on TV?
Me on Star Trek? You damn betcha I watched it. It's like, I've been watching the show forever. It's like that I got to be on Star Trek. I mean, that's a big deal. Even though it was season 6, okay, or whatever. Was it 6 or 7?
7.
7. Even though it was season 7. And they've gone through every other actor in Los Angeles to get it to me. Oh yeah, I watched it. What's interesting was now I can watch it, and I've watched it, but it's been a long time. I'm at the point now, and I'll do the same thing with animation. and video games. If enough time has passed and the writing is good and the animation is good, I'll watch a show, even with Golden Girls, it's true. I'll watch the show, and I know in my mind, I know it's me, I know I did it, but as I'm watching it, that's not me. That's that character. That's not Paul Eiding doing that. That's whoever it is. That's Loquel, or that's Roy Campbell, or that's Grandpa Max, or whatever. And I don't know if it makes any sense, but I know it's my voice, but it's no longer mine. It belongs to that character. And Loquel, I know that's my body, but I disassociate from it over time. Now, if it's really bad writing or my bad acting, then it's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. That was me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of, you give, like you were saying before, you give a lot of yourself into these roles. So it kind of makes sense that you would really just see yourself as a different person out there and that it's not even you because it was someone from a different world.
Right.
Even if it's from our actual Earth right now, like on Golden Girls or Martial Law, but it's someone else. And then they belong to that place.
Right. Exactly. Which is fun.
That's a good way to look at it too, though. That's an interesting way to kind of like approach your characters and what you're doing. And just to kind of keep things back on Star Trek for a moment, I know that you did some VO work with some of the Star Trek games. Do you recall what you did for those games?
No.
Okay. Most folks don't want to ask them about this. Whenever they do games, they don't remember usually, so it's all good.
It's terrible. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't remember. It was the Old Republic, wasn't it?
Well, that would have been Star Wars.
Oh, that was Star Wars. Sorry.
We can't talk about that franchise. Oh, no. But this is a good segue though, because we know that you did do some work in the Trek games. We don't need to talk about that stuff because Star Trek PC games are a whole different world. I'm not touching that universe. But like I was saying earlier at the show, I know you because of all your VO work. I grew up hearing your voice in so many things. It's honestly surreal to be seeing your face and thinking about all the characters I've heard over the years. But I guess I want to talk about a few key characters for you, and maybe we start with Perceptor from Transformers. What do you remember about Perceptor?
He's the most intelligent of the Autobots. And what else do you want to know? He's
Nailed
the
it.
smartest guy around. I love Perceptor. I always have. Oh, God, he was here a minute ago. Now it's moved. Oh, someone actually, I guess it's online somewhere. Someone sent me the original audition sheet that I had for Perceptor.
Wow.
The one that they gave me to read for the very first, oh man, I thought it was here on my desk. Yes, it was a one sheet. It had Wally Burr, who was the director. It had some of his notes. Now, it had a phone number, call so-and-so about something. Had nothing to do with Perceptor. And the audition sheet for Perceptor. And it was really cool because I didn't remember exactly what I had to read. All I do remember was that there are a lot of words and a lot of scientific jargon that was made up that I had to say. They wanted a kind of an absent-minded professor character. And I've been asking them, were you doing C-3PO or something like that? And it's like, no, I just chose to do a bit of an effete sort of, is he English or is he not? Or voice for it. And they bought it. I remember the auditions, not the audition, but the recording sessions. I loved doing Perceptor because he didn't have to yell and scream like everybody else. And I didn't find out till, maybe 15 years ago, that I was one of Wally Burr's favorites because he said, you were a stage actor. I didn't have to tell you things to do. You just did them. Because he would give line readings to guys left and right, and actors hate line readings. But sometimes they get so frustrated. So, well, just tell me how you want me to say it. You say it, and I'll say it. because he was very, very particular. But he wasn't like that with me, with Perceptor. And I said, why didn't you yell at me as much? He said, because you were doing it right. It's like, oh, no, I was teacher's pet and I didn't even know it. And this was, I didn't know that we had a screening. It was a midnight screening at one of the theaters in Santa Monica. And the fellow who was putting it on asked me if I could contact some of the other actors. So I contacted Greg Berger, who was a Dinobot, Grimlock, and a bunch of the other guys. And there were like 10 or 12 of us who showed up. And Wally came. And that's when I found out that he just liked what I was doing. Sometimes when you're not getting anything back from a director, your assumption as an actor is, because we're all so insecure, oh God, I guess he doesn't think I can get any better. Maybe that's why he's not giving me anything. But it was nice that he liked me. He really liked me. And I love Perceptor because he's one of the few that lived through the movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Although he did make children cry. I've had guys in my late 30s come up to me at cons and tell me, said, I was 8, 9 years old, and you made me cry. And I said, oh, you mean when I said, I feel the wounds are fatal. And I swear to God, we were in San Antonio, and he was a military guy. He was probably in his late 30s. And when I said that, I swear to you, he teared up. He said, man, you just took me right back to that time. Because the animated shows never killed the hero.
Yeah, that was a pretty wild scene, especially for a kid to see, and not knowing that was coming. That's intense.
It really was. But didn't happen at that point. Anyway, yeah, I love Perceptor. Because he gets to say things like, cursory evaluation of Decepticon capability indicates a distinct tactical deficiency. In other words, we're outnumbered. Yeah, he uses more words than he needs. But I
like your
the
Robert
guy.
Stack impersonation too, by the way.
Thank you.
Well, I got to ask you about another role, because you mentioned how Perceptor was like nice because you didn't have to do any yelling or anything like that because he's a more reserved character. But I have maybe it's one of my personal favorites. I think it might be, and it's a little bit of an obscure show that you worked on. And I've got my toy of him right here. This is No Zone from Toxic Crusaders, and I love that show. And when I found out that was your voice, I was like, I got to ask about this character, because just thinking about your acting, I feel like No Zone was probably like a pretty demanding kind of character at the voice.
Oh, I love No Zone. I love that show. I mention that show at almost at every con that I do, because it's one of my favorite shows.
That's good.
It was talk about over the top and just plain stupid. It was everything that you want to do as an actor. You get to, the only bad thing about No Zone is I have to make a face when I do No Zone. He's a test pilot, flew through a hole in the ozone and crashed into a vat of radioactive pepper. And his superpower was sneezing.
Yep.
And I had whenever I had to sneeze in the show, and then I would spit all over my script. And I had to have tissue to write my script down because it would get all wet. It was a fun one. I've got my toy too, but I don't have my guru. The guru's all gone.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't survive.
Yeah, the guru doesn't survive. But the whole idea of having a hole in the back of his head and you can squeeze the tube and it would come out of his nose, this green goo out of his nose. Yeah, that's pretty damn cool. And a lot of the same characters same guys I worked with on Star Trek, not Star Trek, on Transformers and other games, got to work with them there as well.
Yeah,
which was really fun. Yeah, that was a great cast, and great director Sue Blue, who's a dear friend. Can I tell you a quick story about that show?
Absolutely.
Okay. the auditions. They called me in, and had me audition for 2 characters, No Zone and another character who was a little toady character of Dr. Killamoff. Okay? The little toady character, he's kind of, I saw him as kind of drug-addled and not very bright. And there was an actor that I'd seen in several movies, one Bonnie and Clyde, and a couple other movies of the era in the 70s, 80s. I did his voice. I was trying to do his voice, okay? When I finished the audition, Sue Blue, the director, said, Paul, who were you ding just now? I recognize that voice, but who was that? And I told her, and she said it was very funny. Okay? So I get cast, I get the job, I go to the first read, and I'm there doing No Zone. And sitting at the table is that actor whose voice I was mimicking. They went and hired him to do that character. So I got the dude a job. He was a very nice guy, but I think that he'd done an awful lot of drugs earlier in his life. I don't know if he was very funny. The character was very funny, very weird, because it was him. The only problem was, usually if a director says, you got to pick up like a second and a half, do the same read, just pick it up by a second and a half. Couldn't do it. Okay, this one, could you pull it out for about a half second more to fit the video? Couldn't do it. It took forever. So that was the only problem. It took a lot longer to record stuff with him. But the character, the end result was his character was funny, it worked, and he never said thank you for me getting him a job. I don't think you ever knew how he got the gig. In fact, I talked to Sue about this. We did a con together last year. And I said, do you remember this? And she said, I kind of remembered. I'm not sure. I said, yeah, I remember really well. Yeah, I love that show. Thank you for liking it. Yeah.
Oh, it holds up. I mean, it's still out there on YouTube for anybody who wants to see it. It's the weirdest thing. You wouldn't think, Trauma Films' Toxic Avenger makes for a great kids cartoon, but Toxic Crusaders somehow cleaned it up and made it great.
Yeah. Listen, when I did San Diego Comic-Con and ran into, what's his name?
Lloyd Kaufman?
Yeah. And he said, and I told him, I said, hey, man, I did the Toxic Crusaders. He said, oh, yeah, we're the ones who ruined my career. He was just very funny. He's about 4 feet tall now. He's very funny guy. Yeah, that was, I loved doing that show. And now, there's a game.
Yes, there is a game. Yeah. Did you do the voice for that game?
No. For the commercial for the game, they pulled some stuff from the original. Now, I never got paid for that either. I don't know if they're actually using my voice or if they're using other guys. They better not be using my voice.
Well, I will have to do some homework and let you know about that, because that would be bad if they did that.
Yeah.
Well, I think, if we're going to talk gaming now, we got to talk about the Colonel from the Metal Gear series. Colonel Campbell. Man, I was just literally watching someone on Twitch play through the entire series, and you do some great work in that too. And it's kind of interesting now knowing that you have a background in the military and the armed services as well. But what I want to really ask about is some of that dense Kojima dialogue, some of the Hideo Kojima dialogue that's in the game, especially that kind of weird stuff, if you remember, from Metal Gear Solid 2, where you're kind of just your character's kind of going a little, a little out there. I'm curious to know, number one, how much of that particular part was improv and how much that was purely from the script, and just what you thought about Colonel Campbell, because he's kind of a character with a lot more depth than you would expect.
Yeah, that's all written. There was no improv at all in any of that. That was that's all his stuff. The man, just brilliant. Yeah, I'm really lucky to have been able to be involved in that series, from 1 to a little bit, in just that much in 3, and then a 4. 2, especially, is the one that everybody talks about because it was kind of prescient. He saw the future. He talked about what we're going through now with information and search information and disinformation and what's true, what's not true, all that kind of stuff. I loved it. In fact, that's the 2 is the only time I met him.
Really?
He wasn't at the session for any of the other ones, but for this one, he was there at the session. And his English wasn't as good. It got better afterwards. But all I remember is him going, "So, okay, good. So if the boss likes it, then I'm happy." The thing that I remember about 2 especially is when he really starts going off the rails and starts rambling at I hear it's amazing when the famous purple stuffed worm in Flapjaw space with a tuning fork does a raw blink on Harry Carey rock. I need scissors, 61, all that kind of stuff. That was that, and then the Japanese train station names, and I was riding home, and there was an orange light in the sky, and all that kind of and about having problems with paying these bills or whatever. That kind of stuff. All that was on a one sheet after we recorded everything else. We recorded everything, and then we got to that, and Reese Salter, Zimmerman Salter, the director, who directed all of them, and I think she did a masterful job. She gave me that sheet, and I asked her, I said, "What does this mean?" And she said, "Don't worry about it. It'll come clear later." Because I didn't know what the heck was going on. They didn't even tell me that it was an AI at the beginning. It's like, oh, okay. So you do it, and then some of it comes clear later, and some of it still doesn't come clear later. It's what I always say is it all starts with the word. Metal Gear changed the way games were made. I don't know how much video was involved, as opposed to just the game. It's been hours of stuff that I can't think of any other game before them that was like that. But getting a chance to do Campbell, listen, people contact me all the time on Cameo, and they want me to say something as Campbell. So I've got a beret with the Fox sound on it, and I put it down. And listen, this is really off track, but it was great because one of the requests I got was to do the husband. They were getting married, and they were both Metal Gear fans. They met playing Metal Gear. And they were getting married, and their friend, I don't know if he was the best man or what, but he wanted me to do a voiceover, actually on camera, and then they were going to project it, inviting them out for their first dance. So Campbell is directing them. That's their mission.
Wow.
To do their first dance. So I had to came up with something. I don't know what I said. But when there's that kind of fan support for a game, the game meant something to folks and still does. And 2, if you really listen to 2 and go back and listen to my ranting and raving, it's pretty astounding and terrifying in a lot of ways. I'm doing a convention in July here in town, and it's a Metal Gear centric convention put together by fans. No corporate sponsors, nothing. It's just fans who went. They did it last year, and I couldn't do it because I was already off. I'd already committed to another convention, but this one I'm committing to them. So I won't take any other gig, but I want to be there for the Metal Gear fans. Yeah, it's an amazing game. Have you played them all?
Personally, I've played, I think, one of them myself, but for the most part, I've been in the room with folks who do play it because I've got some friends who are real Metal Gear nuts, so they're devoted. Like I remember watching my friend play through 2 for the first time, and we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know what was coming. So when all that starts happening, it's just like, whoa, this is some bizarre, disturbing stuff. But like you were saying, this is like some breakthrough stuff for video games. It really was at the time.
Yeah. You've been saying, you turn it off, turn off the console now.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? I can't tell how many people told me they were playing the game till it's like 2:00 in the morning. They're sitting in a dark room, and all of a sudden, the voice is talking to them.
Yeah.
Saying you've been sitting there long enough. No, turn it off now. And one guy said, I forgot to save. It's like, that kind of stuff.
That's why they did that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a special game. It really is.
I mean, one of the cartoons that I've watched, I'm not like a super fan of it, but I'm very, very aware of it. And it's hard not to be, is Ben 10. And when I found out that you were Grandpa Max Tennyson from the entire Ben 10 series, that's pretty amazing because that show really, talk about fan base and you talk about a show with a life of its own. Ben 10 has absolutely got, I think 20 years from now, that's going to be like the equivalent of my generation's Transformers.
I think you may be right. I love doing that show. I love Grandpa Max because he's everything I want to be.
I was curious to know like if you modeled him after anybody in your life. And I know you've got your military background. That might have influenced a little bit of Colonel Campbell, but Tennyson's kind of like this interesting, he's a little bit military, a little bit scientist. He's a little bit of like everything. So was there anybody you had in mind for him?
No, me. It's like I said, he's what I want to be. He was a big guy. I'm not. He's like, same thing with Campbell. It's like, I'm 6'2". That's what I love about voiceover. I can be 7 feet tall if I want to be.
I mean, you're sitting down. I have no idea how big you are right now, so I'm going to just assume you're like 8'10" or something.
Thank you. Oh, I could be, 5'1". I could be anything I want to be with voiceover. Grandpa Max is a big guy. He's smart. He's a magister. He wants to settle the universe. But for him, it's all, bottom line, it's all about love and it's all about family. It's all about caring about somebody else and caring about something bigger than yourself. And that's what I've always tried to be, and try to, in my personal life. I have 2 daughters, and that's the other thing I've always tried to impart on them. It's like family is really important, and caring about others. It's like, it's what life is about. Nobody's going to care about what I have or what I've, any of that kind of stuff. They're going to care about what you've shared, what you've given. It sounds kind of corny, but it's the absolute truth. That's what I loved about Grandpa Max. And early on in Ben 10, the first couple of episodes were pretty scary for me because when I first got cast, they wanted kind of how do you put it? Not country, but kind of a down home feel to him. So when I first got cast to Grandpa Max, he had just a touch of a drawl. It's like, oh, Ben, how you doing, Ben? Come on now. It takes more than omnitrix to be a hero. We did a couple of episodes like that, and I could tell that nobody in the booth was really happy about it. And I wasn't really happy about it. It just wasn't landing. And at the end of I think it was the end of the 3rd episode. Yeah, it's second or third, I think the 3rd episode, they asked, Paul, could you stay after? And I thought I was going to get fired because I wasn't happy with what he sounded like. It just didn't feel authentic somehow. So I thought, okay, bye. And they told me, he said, let's try something else. And we went back and forth, and finally I just did me, but with just a little deeper, Ben. It takes more than an omnitrix to make a hero, And they said, yeah, let's go with that. And I'll be honest, the next couple of episodes, I was hoping, I said, is this really what they want, or am I on the way out? And then, but it was, and then each time we did a new incarnation of the game, I had to re-audition for my part.
Really?
Everybody did. Everybody had to re-audition for their part. I understood it when Ben became 15 years old. And Ben, they said, okay, now, Ben is now 15, so he's 5 years older. So maybe Grandpa Max isn't as strong. Maybe he's got a little bit of, it's just not as powerful with his voice. And then they said, well, no, maybe just more gravel. So I'll put more gravel in the voice. And finally he came back and said, it's only 5 years. For an adult, your voice doesn't change that much in 5 years. For a kid, yeah. So, and then the third time, same for Omnitrix. It's like, okay, they brought in new producers for each incarnation of the show. So people wanted to bring their own people in. In fact, they've redone it, made them for really little kids, made short shows, and they went with somebody else. Like, what are you going to do? That's the business, you know? And
it might be, but I mean, you pretty much had like that historic run as that character. I mean, you're pretty much the iconic voice for him.
I would think. We did it for, 10 years.
Yeah.
But David Clare, who does him now, or was doing, I don't know if he said to it or not, great guy and a great actor. He's and a Betty and another Transformer, but one of the newer Transformers. So you never get upset with an actor who ends up doing your voice, because we take over for people all the time. So you never get upset with the actor. It's like actors are going to try and do their best to get a job, you know. Anyway, but I don't watch the new one.
Neither do I, so it's fine. Yeah. So, Paul, the weirdest thing about listening to you right now is the fact that, like, your voice has stayed the same, it feels like. Like, I'm listening to you now, and I'm hearing you do your Perceptor, your Roy Campbell, your Uncle Max, or Grandpa Max, and your voices still sound the same. I mean, how have you kept your voice so protected and well-preserved for so many generations of cartoons?
Cigarettes and whiskey.
You know, I've heard that before.
No, I don't do either. There was a famous actor who said, well, how do you get that voice? He said, cigarettes and whiskey. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't Mel Blanc saying that.
Yeah, probably. No, I'm lucky. And I'll be honest with you, there are times, in the morning especially, and my wife will attest to this, there have been times that I would get up in the morning and I'd be walking around talking, and I would turn to my wife and I said, God, I hate the sound of my voice right now. I can't stand it. It's like, she said, it's okay. It's okay. You know, and I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's, I don't know. I'm just lucky. I try not to abuse myself, although there are things that I can't do now because of the way I've used my voice over the years, because I've done a lot of, military stuff, a lot of screaming and yelling and that sort of thing. I used to have a pretty good range vocally, singing wise, and I can't get those tops. When I was directing the Army Chorus, I would teach the music, so I could teach the basses, their music, the baritones, the tenors, and the first tenors, and it would be easy to go up and down. Not anymore. Not for an extended period of time. Now, part of that is I suppose, just age as well. I try to take care of myself, because especially lately, I've chosen not to do a lot of on-camera stuff. So the voice has got to be it for me, Listen, when I first got out here, I was blown away because Dawes Butler,
Mm-hmm.
who did everything at Hanna-Barbera,
Yes.
did the voice of Elroy, 8-year-old boy, and he was in his mid-70s, still doing Elroy. So, and of course, any of the major superheroes, as far as voiceover is concerned, have got those ranges.
Yeah.
And you got to take care of yourself.
True, but as much as like there's people out there like Dawes Butler who had the range, you got guys like Lorenzo Music, the late Lorenzo Music, who basically did one voice, but that was his career, and it worked.
It sure did. And we had a great voice that was,
my God, yeah.
Yeah, we had the same agent. And it was very funny because there was a day he came into the agency, Sutton, Barth, and Venari, and he was upset because he wanted to broaden out and do different sorts of characters. And they tried, but he only had the one voice. And it was so recognizable that you're kind of stuck, buddy. And it's always the way. You get pigeonholed, and you don't like getting pigeonholed. But if you get pigeonholed and you have a career, then at least you got that. And sometimes being too versatile can hurt you, because they don't think of you for this one particular thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, actors, we always want more than we have. We're never happy.
That's because you're all hungry.
Yeah.
Possibly literally. I mean, we're all starving artists right here, but maybe, hungry for sandwiches and also for work and keep going.
Yeah. It just, the desire to make something and to be creative and to be part of something that lasts. When I say things like I'm really lucky, I really mean that. I'm really lucky to have been involved with some really wonderful projects, whether it's Ben Tanner or Star Trek, even with just one episode. And Metal Gear, Diablo. These are things that are going to last for a while. And Transformers, this is our 40th year. So in March, there's going to be a Transformers TFCon here in Los Angeles. And they're bringing it's a reunion year. So they're bringing back all of us who are still around from Rem, and then a whole bunch of folks from later incarnations of the show. So it's going to be a huge group of actors there. I think they're talking about like 30, 35 actors. It's going to be fun.
I mean, you look back at your whole career here, we're talking just some really masterpiece performances, whether it's on screen or behind the microphone in a VO booth. I mean, you've done a lot of stuff here. And usually I tend to ask this question a little bit later on, but I feel like this is a good time. For yourself and for all you've done professionally and personally, what do you see as being the legacy of yourself?
Man, that's a tough one. A working actor. Just, I'm a guy that just, kept it up, and just blessed to have fooled so many people for so many years, to think that I had talent, to end up having the career that I wanted and didn't decide until 1975. And that's a tough question. I just want to be, another cornball thing. I want to be known as a working actor who loved his wife and his daughters more than he loved himself, and tried to leave something of value, whatever that is, And we used to always talk about, acting. It's not not brain surgery. We're not curing cancer. We tended to have, or at least I'll talk for myself. I've always tended to minimize what I do, what actors do. But I've learned through Comic-Cons, through actually talking to fans of my work. I can't even say fans of me. I always have to, it's fans of my work. That what we do is more than just selling toys and more than just selling a game. We're giving memories, and I can't tell you how many people have come up to me at different cons and tell me that either Grandpa Max or Perceptor, what they meant to them in their early lives when things weren't going well, and how a game helped them get through a really horrible time in their life and their feelings of self-worth and whatnot. So we're giving of ourselves, something that can help people, even in small ways,
So true.
whether it's a memory or just helping somebody through a tough time in their life. So I've got to stop, and I have stopped minimizing the importance of entertainment, Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
I think it definitely does. And that's kind of been, I feel like, indicative of what we talked about throughout this entire chat today. Really, a lot of that. Let me throw some more hard questions at you, Paul, because I'm not done yet. I got a few more as we wrap things up here. I want to ask you now, this is kind of like the Trek Untold lightning round of the questions that are going to be lightning fast, but they're equally difficult. Let me start with best day you ever had on the job, whether that's acting, VO, or in front of the camera or on stage. Best day on the job and worst day on the job.
Oh, geez. Best day on the job. Oh, my first day on Star Trek.
Really?
Meeting Picard, because I've been a major fan of his since, oh God, what was it? Since I Claudius.
I was going to say I Claudius, yeah.
Yeah, since I Claudius, and having such incredible respect for the man, and to be standing there as he gets off, and as we get off and walk, and there they all are, and trying to maintain my cool, because I'm a very cool actor. I'm a fanboy just like everybody else, That was really a big one for me.
And my 2 cents, by the way, on this is Patrick Stewart played such a bastard in I Claudius. Oh my God, what a great role. If Trekkies out there haven't seen it, y'all got to go watch it.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good. Everybody in that series was brilliant.
The whole series is great. I mean, that's basically, if you like Game of Thrones, this predated Game of Thrones by a bunch of decades, and it is so good.
And you'll see actors that you didn't realize, oh my God, they were young. They had hair. Or what?
Well, Patrick Stewart still didn't, but.
Right, exactly. Worst day. What's funny is that the worst day came in my head first. Worst day on stage was also doing Fiddler on the Roof. I had a moment, I guess it was a panic attack. We'd finished the show. At the end of the show, of Fiddler on the Roof, Tevye is leaving. He says, let's go. He picks up the handles of his cart, his milk cart. His family's walking behind them. And they walk and they do this large circle. And when they stop at the top of the stage, while everyone else is saying leaving Anatevka, leaving their home. They're all leaving. And so we're standing there frozen until the fiddler comes out and plays at the end anyway. So I'm standing there on the stage and I'm having this panic. I guess that's what it was. And I said to myself, I feel like I'm going to die right now. I don't want to die on stage. these people don't know me. They know who I'm playing, but they don't know Paul Eiding. I don't want to die in front of a bunch of strangers who don't really care about me. They care about the show, blah, 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 blah. All this stuff is going through my head as I'm standing there frozen, and at the same time, I'm telling myself, breathe, just breathe. Because the next thing that happens is the show ends, and then everybody clears the stage, music comes up, and slowly, when everybody is linking arms as they come to walking from the end of the stage, from off stage to the center, each person takes a bow, and we make this large circle, and they build a circle around, and then at the very end, the circle opens, and there's Thebia in the middle, dancing and singing and smiling. And that's me. So all of this stuff, I'm going through all this stuff in my head, thinking, oh, I'm going to die. This is horrible. They don't like me. Why would, they're here for this, blah, 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 blah. And now I've got to come out and smile and take a bow, which I did. And it passed. So it was one of those surreal moments that I've never had. I never had it before, and I've never had it since. Thank goodness. Now that's a little different from probably what you're looking for.
That's definitely on par for this show. But hey, what matters? Wonder of wonder, miracle of miracle. You survived.
Yeah, I survived.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. I did have a weird moment working with what's her name, Anna Nicole Smith.
Well, you can't just leave me hanging on that story.
Oh, it was a movie called Skyscraper. It was her version of Die Hard, where she's a helicopter pilot and terrorists are taking over the skyscraper, and she's coming in to save the place. And I have a quick scene. I'm in an elevator. I'm waiting for the elevator to open. Elevator opens, and there's Anna Nicole Smith in this beautiful jumpsuit with zippers all over the place. And of course, it's cut down pretty low. And I'm standing there waiting for the elevator. It opens, and she grabs me and pulls me in. And the way it's written, of course, my character immediately thinks, oh, she wants me. And she's a big lady. She pulls me in, and I start saying things to her. I don't remember what it was, but, kind of coming on to her. And she has some lines, and then I talk, and she has some lines. The director at one point said, okay, let's do another take. And Anna kept talking over my lines. She would walk on my lines. And the director said, Anna, you can't walk on his lines. She said, what do you mean? I said, you can't talk while he's talking. She said, oh, okay. So we do the scene again, and pulls me in. I start saying something. She doesn't respond. So I started ad-libbing. So I talked about things, and I said, oh, I like your zippers. A lot of zippers there, huh? Oh, I don't know what else it was about, but I was getting suggestive, and still nothing from her. I said, ooh, you're a tall lady. I don't know what I was making up stuff. And finally, I see, out of my peripheral vision, I see movement behind the camera. And finally, the director yells, cut. And he's laughing hysterically. And he said, Anna, why didn't you say your lines? And she said, well, you said I couldn't talk while he's talking. He said, no. While he's saying his line, but then you still have to. So we did it again and again, and we finally got through it. At one point, the elevator door was supposed to close, and there's a little jerk. I didn't know that she was terrified of elevators. So she grabbed my arm and I had bruises from she was really freaked out. This is also the time she was just high as a kite. So she was poor thing was on drugs and whatnot. So that was a pretty bad time. But the best part of the whole thing was I get to wear squibs where they shoot me. So blood was pouring out, I go fly up against the elevator and there's blood bursting out of the back of my head and my body. So it was like, that was the fun part. I'm sorry, that was a rambling thing. You can cut that all.
I'm absolutely not cutting that story out at all. That was gold. Squibs and Anna Nicole Smith. We're sold.
Right,
We're
right.
solid to the episode here. We're good. Just a few more things for you, Paul. I'd like to know, we talked about, again, so many great roles that you've had. What's the role that you're most proud of looking at your entire career? Like, if you were going to tell someone to look at this one piece of work, what would it be?
In my youth, it would be my fiddler. Because I was told by Theo Loquel that anyone who does tevye has to feel that theirs is the quintessential tevye. You have to feel that way. Otherwise, you shouldn't be doing tevye. But I did something during the pandemic that I think I'm proudest of. A short film, a 12-minute film called Frank and Emmett. And you can see it on YouTube. We were Oscar qualified last year, but obviously didn't make it. But I think I'm more proud of that than anything because it was shot during the pandemic. My beard, which I've grown now for the Shakespeare, I had the beard because of doing Shakespeare back in 2019. And then I had this audition, and they wanted somebody with a beard, long beard. So I just kept the beard growing for months. And it's a man telling his partner of like 40 years that the act is ending. And it's funny, but it's more serious and sweet. And it's me telling my partner, who happens to be a Muppet. It's more of an homage. The writer-director said it was an homage to Jim Henson and those Muppeteers who are now passing. And I'm really proud of it. Yeah, so I would love for people to go and watch that. And that's another one that I'm at the point now where I can watch it, and it's not me. It looks like me, more than anything else that I've done, because it was done in 2000. It was done in 20 or 21, and it's beautifully written and directed and shot. Yeah, so that's one of those pieces, on camera especially.
So we're gonna have some links to make sure folks can watch that, by the way. So we'll be checking that out.
Cool.
Now, how about most valuable lesson that someone ever taught you, whether this was a life lesson or a professional lesson, that you still think about and still use today?
You don't have easy questions, do you?
Nope. No, I don't. This is what you signed up for. This is Trek Untold.
Oh, it's not all about you. Everything that happens isn't all about you. And that was told to me. He gave me 2 bits of advice. And this, again, goes back to when I was doing Fiddler. My Laser Wolf, the butcher. Laser Wolf was an Israeli actor by the name of Reuben Singer, who done Laser Wolf with Topo when they were touring it before he did the movie. And his voice was like, this was his voice. He was about maybe 5'2", but his incredible voice like that. And he said 2 things. It's not all about you. Number 2, don't take responsibility for everyone. He says, because he was talking about the responsibility thing was in working, doing tevye. You can't take care of everybody. Maybe on stage tevye does, but because it'll deplete you. You'll run out of everything. And it's not all about you. He said he learned early on that everything that happens, not everything is personal. So you can't take everything personal. Not only that, but you're not responsible for everything good, and you're not responsible for everything bad. You know, there are other things going on in and around you. And it's like, oh, okay, good, yeah. It takes some weight off, takes some of the pressure off. And also, it knocks your ego down a little bit. You don't have to think it's all about me, babe. You know what I mean? Yeah, just be you.
And last question today. Paul, what is the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
Well, I get to gloat. No.
That's fair.
Well, I get to finally say in a theater company that I'm one of the fellowship. I actually got to be part of it. Yeah, I because it is all about me. Like my other pins, I've got all these pins, and the guys who work with Roddenberry, when I was going down to San Diego Comic-Con, they gave me the
communicator badge.
Yeah, it was very cool. I usually wear it when I do my Comic-Cons, which means that yes, I'm one of the chosen. I don't mind telling you, I did feel special. I got to get something that I've been watching since way in the day. So far in the day that when I did, one of the guys that I got to work with the Transformers was Harry Mudd. I got to work with him.
Wow.
Roger C. Carmel. It's like, are you kidding me? I actually talked to him. We were in the studio together. That was a big deal. So just having done it, I wish listen, I would have loved to have been a regular on one of the shows. And I don't mind telling you, and I've had discussions with other members of Antaeus about which is your favorite. And I'm sorry, TNG is. There are people that say, no, Enterprise, no. And so I happen to like TNG.
But you might be a little bit biased, maybe. I don't know.
You think?
Yeah, just a little.
Maybe a little.
Yeah. But I mean, to be fair, you got to not only go on the Enterprise, it's like probably a childhood dream right there, is hang out on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Have chocolate with Counselor Troy, and play poker, by the way, which we should add. Most guests on the Enterprise don't do that. That's usually a crew member thing only. So you were one of the very few people who got to actually just enjoy a poker game with Starfleet members.
Yeah. So I guess it is all about me.
Well, I mean, to be fair, though, we'll go back to what we were saying earlier. 1975 is when you find what you want to do. And here we are now in 2024. We're still talking about what you were doing in the 1980s. 30 years from now, they're going to be talking about what you did on Ben 10 and all these other things. So, I mean, you've built yourself, for a guy who said, that you feel like you were lying for some parts of your career and you were fooling us. I mean, you definitely fooled us really well if you were, because you built up quite a foundation of some amazing things in your lifetime and your career and everything else that you've done.
You're very kind. And I got to be, swear to God, I'm being honest. I take none of it for granted. And I know that a lot of it is luck, being in the right place at the right time. And the whole thing of luck is, you got to have the opportunity and then be ready to follow through when you get that chance. But a lot of it is luck. I've got friends who are living in Minneapolis who are as talented or not more so than I am. But somehow I've got this career, So I do feel lucky. I feel blessed. And like other actors, like, yeah, but what if I did this instead of that? Would I have been further on? It's like, hey, it is what it is, and it's not all about me. And I'm just really lucky that I've had the career. And I'm lucky that my dear friend Deborah Levin, introduced me to you. And she told me that I would like this because you don't ask the same questions other people ask.
I ask much tougher ones.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And it's been fun.
Oh, thank you. And shout out to Deborah. And, as amazing and as humble as you are, today is very much about you. And this is the spotlight that you have earned through decades of very hard work that has entertained us and brought us a lot of great memories. So on behalf of my entire generation and on behalf of the future generations who are going to be saying this too, we thank you for what you've given us, because you've given us a lot of great entertainment and a lot of just wonderful parts of our childhood that we can take into as adults and just keep having that memory. So thank you for all of that.
I really appreciate that. And what I always say, I'm nothing without people, the fans who like my work. It's the same feeling that I get when I'm on stage. We're nothing without the audience. I can be the greatest actor in the world and nobody sees me. Who cares? It is a shared event, whether it's on camera, voiceover, or in person. It is symbiotic relationship. We need each other, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul.
You bet, dude.
That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold. Thank you for checking it out. Don't forget to follow us on social media, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Trek Untold, and subscribe wherever you are listening to or watching on. And that includes the audio versions on whatever platforms that might be, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@TrekUntold. If you'd like to support this show financially, please consider visiting patreon.com/TrekUntold to become a member of this show. And along with getting access to all sorts of wonderful perks, you'll also know that you're helping out this show continue to thrive, survive, and make new content all the time. I'm Matthew Kaplowitz. This has been Trek Untold. Thanks for watching. And until next time, always remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars, is powered by the Rageworks Podcast Network and affiliated with Nerd News Today.